Now, you're very welcome along to the football show. As ever, Pat Nevin is with us. Hello, Pat Nevin.
How are you doing, Joe? You well?
Very well, very well. Lots to discuss. Sad news on Gerard Houllier passing, aged 73. Long history of heart problems, as we know. I mean, there was the half-time against Leeds where he fell ill, and there was surgery back in 01 when he was fresh from having won the treble, and he continued in day-to-day management till about 2011. The heart problems seem to be a consistent issue for him, and very sadly, he's passed away in France today at the age of 73. The older you get, the younger 73 starts to feel, I have to say.
Yeah, it does. Apart from everything else, I mean, the talent he had as a coach, like every other coach, he could have his moments where he'd be angry and, let vent his feelings. But generally, every single person you talk to just liked him. Just a really likeable and very nice guy. It's unusual for managers to have that, because you'll build up enemies over the years. I didn't come across many of them, and all the people that I worked with that knew him really well, like Gary McAllister, etc., they just spoke incredibly highly of him. And just generally always come back to that same thing. Yes, he had the talent as a coach and knowledge of football, but he's a really nice bloke, and a guy that people like spending time with. So yeah, it seems very young. It feels very young, but as you say, we all knew that he had these heart problems for quite a long time, and it doesn't make it any easier.
He really wasn't very far away for a time with Liverpool from, really pushing for Premier League glory. I mean, there was a time where it was Liverpool and Man United when they were in their pomp and at their peak under him, and they won the treble in 01. They were, teak-tough team, disciplined, tactically adept, and, he brought through the Gerrard Carragher, those Liverpool players. Michael Owen was there for a time as well. He had a really good thing going at Liverpool for a time.
Yeah, and you just wonder about certain coaches, if they've been given enough time or a longer period of time with, think they rebuild and sort of build on what they'd actually put together, how far it could have gone. In many years gone by, you'd have been given 10 years with some managers, and you could maybe have built a dynasty. Just as harder. The nearer you get to the modern era, the less likely that is to get that. But I still think he's remembered very, very fondly by Liverpool fans, but also fans from around Europe, and he was deeply loved in France as well. And he hadn't given up in his work in football, although he had to take some of the stress out of it from that he'd work. He couldn't do the day-to-day stuff for quite a long time. I know he was working heavily in women's football as well. He was involved in Lyon, who are basically the best of the best in women's football. So he'd still been successful in football and continue to do it all the way to the end.
Well, it's very sad news. So lots of well wishes around the world of football coming in for Gerard Houllier. He passed away at the age of 73 today. To matters far less important, the football over the weekend. In no particular order, I mean, I think everybody was looking forward to the Manchester derby as what would be the high point, hopefully. Saturday, 5 o'clock. This fitted very nicely in with everybody's schedule. And then, man, was it drab. Why was it so bad?
Right, so we'll try to look for excuses for this, right? I mean, it was awful. I mean, it was a really dull game. I mean, City certainly weren't playing anywhere near their best, so they weren't playing that really sharp football. Maybe, and here's an argument, and shoot me down, please. This is the best time possible to face the Champions League teams. I mean, they're just after a lot of these teams, if you look at Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool as well, and Spurs, they all, and Arsenal to some degree as well, they've all been playing midweek games as well. Now, this is the last group of midweek games they had there that were all bunched together, and they come up the end of this week. This will be the most tired. Now, I know a lot of them have been able to rest some players and, move the squad around. Yes, they've been able to do that, but it's accumulation of all those games together. And if you look at not just Manchester City, Manchester United, you look at Chelsea, you look at Spurs to some degree, you look at Arsenal definitely. Those top teams that have been putting it in week in, week out, and midweeks for European stuff, they look wiped out this week. And if there was ever going to be a week in the season where it was going to hit them, it was actually going to be this weekend. Now, in retrospect, I'm only saying that in retrospect because I was thinking this is dross. There must be a reason for this. But it may well be that. And it's not just tiredness, it's a number of injuries as well. Certain players playing with injuries. And if you look at, certainly some of the players there, they were miles below par.
There was also a cautious tilt to affairs. Rodri, Fernandinho play Manchester United made damn sure they weren't going to get caught on the counter-attack either. They're possibly in a more fragile state than Manchester City. Guardiola afterwards said several times, it is Old Trafford, it's great to get a point. So there was definitely an air of, well, let's not lose anywhere, or let's not lose stupidly about the thing as well, which, like, you get. You respect their professional outlook, but as a viewer, there's a sense of, oh, come on, what's the point?
I know, because we'd all been really up for it. We're all desperate to see the game. There's enough good players out there. I mean, I'm watching certain players, you're thinking, right, okay, De Bruyne, he rarely lets you down. But, he was probably a 7 out of 10 as opposed to a 9.5, which he usually is. Players like Mahrez were making ridiculous mistakes. I mean, really, some really poor ones for him, really off his standard as well. And even the likes of Sterling and that. So the very best players, that City got. Things like, at no point, or very few points, did City do that high press and liven the game up that way. And you just thought, that's a bit disappointing, because you'd expect that from them. But remember, City have not had that great a recent. There's been a few Manchester United wins recently, so they would have been wary of that. And of course, the position that City are in just now, they really don't want to fall too far behind. So it's one of those ones where I think they were the ones that had to push it. And oddly enough, they seem not able to do so. Or you might be right, it might be to some degree not willing, but I think that's incredible to think that of Pep, because he would try and push it a little bit. I just don't know if the players were absolutely up for it. And you can't do it with 6 or 7 of them. If you're going to do that sort of game and that sort of pressing game, everybody has to be on board. Everybody has to be up for it. Everyone has to be fit enough to do it. And for long periods of that game, they looked nowhere near it.
Since we've last spoken, Manchester United out of the Champions League in fairly dismal fashion. So you absolutely suspect Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, by matter of self-preservation, could not risk a 2-3, 4-0 loss at Old Trafford. And, he makes off with his point, and at least there's not crisis around Carrington this morning. But where do you suspect this past week has left Solskjaer? I mean, it feels slightly weakened again, but teetering along okay, almost waiting for the next crisis to hit.
Not sackable yet. Definitely not sackable yet. Purely because if they win their game in hand, they're up to 4th in the league, where they would want to be. And we all know the problems. We all know that they're not playing that well. Just look around the league. Is there anybody else really playing fantastically well all the time? So, if you dive in now and make massive changes now, it seems an odd thing to do. I don't think they'll do it now, even though they've been knocked out of the Champions League. That could have happened to just about any team, but they let themselves down and didn't play their best when they should have done. But is it utterly, totally sackable yet? No, you're right. I think your phrase, teetering on the edge, and I just get a feeling that Ole's going to teeter along that edge for quite some time to come. Because if he stays in that area, the top 6-ish, I know they're just outside it just now, but with the games in hand, etc., if he stays in that area, you think they just about put up with it until the end of the season.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like Roy Keane, Gary Neville, Micah Richards at one point on Sky asked them, is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the right man? And Keane gave a very black and white answer and said they need to win a trophy. And I don't know, I mean, if they finish 8th and win the Carabao Cup, that doesn't feel all that satisfactory. Neville made maybe a more nuanced point. He was saying, well, at the moment they only win games by either counter-attacking or with special moments, because given all the money they have spent, they do have special players. They need to start dominating games against good teams, is what he said. And I thought that was a very fair observation. They still haven't got to that point. It's still a lot of counter-attacking, a lot of, big moments, plucking some games out of the fire. He still feels 2, 3, 4 bad results in a row away from, all the pressure, all the speculation. And I don't know, 2 years on, has he really progressed all that much? I mean, Bruno Fernandes made a difference, but in terms of the way they're going about trying to win games, it still feels like it did at the beginning, sucker punch teams with moments of brilliance or counter-attacking football.
I think everybody feels the same way. You look at the group there, and generally there's probably enough to get you 3rd-ish, 4th-ish, with a good run, excellent management, and everybody bought into the programme. It just doesn't look like that. I personally think it's kind of the bought into the programme bit's a part of the problem. And also, you're talking about playing in the counter. Okay, so it's not Manchester United style historically. But if that's what you're best at, you use it. And certainly when you've got players like Rashford, who's actually extraordinary in that sort of situation, Greenwood to some degree as well, Maybe you do have to play on that and get those great moments, usually from Bruno Fernandes. You play off them. If you go and try and dominate games and then you're broken on, don't worry, we'll be spending here going, how naive, how stupid of you, how can you play that way when that's not your strengths? It doesn't seem to be their strengths just now. I think the question is, United fans, and most of us watching on, I don't think we can see this getting much better. It might not get a lot worse, but it's not going to get a hell of a lot better under Ole just now. And that's maybe the thing that's a wee bit concerning. If you're Manchester United and where you think you should be and where you've been historically, it's not really enough in the longer term. So, I mean, if I had to guess now, absolutely had to guess with what he's got just now, I think he'll probably limp on to the end of the season. But I'm not sure about after that, because you might still have Pochettino available. Other people might become available then. You find out what's happening with COVID. You find out what's happening with finances, and then you can build something different. It might be a temptation then. The only thing that will push it, I don't think they're going to run away and win the league. But I think if they do go on a bad run and the fans, when they get there, turn on the board, that's the only thing that will hoof them out. That's the only thing. Other than that, they'll probably just stick with them.
I guess it wasn't such a bad point for either side, given that Liverpool and Spurs both dropped 2 points yesterday. It was kind of a patched up Liverpool. They have Leipzig in the Champions League. If you haven't heard, the draw has been made. Man City have Borussia Mönchengladbach. Chelsea have Atletico Madrid. That will be no fun. Barcelona play PSG, which is good. Europa League, Man United Sociedad, already been called the David Moyes Derby, and Benfica against Arsenal. Let's talk Arsenal. They were beaten 1-0 by Burnley. Granit Xhaka, moment of madness, fresh on the heels of Nicolas Pepe at Ellen Road. All the smoke signals out of the training ground and behind the scenes there aren't good. It seems there is trouble in paradise.
It just doesn't look great at all. As a team and as a group, as a unit, it doesn't look right. And you look at, I'm looking at them most weeks, and I think their best player is their left back. That's generally not a good thing. So, okay, I'll go on about him because he's Scottish, fair enough, but he is the best player and he looks the most dangerous player. But you look at, Lacazette looks lacking in confidence, Aubameyang similarly lacking in confidence, the back line looks messy. Xhaka, to be honest, you can almost give up now because his liability too often, and he went through periods where he was just kicking out at people. And now that everybody knows, and everybody does know, just wind him up. He has a classic one. You just wind him up a bit. And if you look closely at that tackle Xhaka was involved in before he grabbed, he actually went with a terrible tackle, miles away from the tackle, fall through his arm as well. It's one of those ones where, honestly, it's useless. It's pathetic. You shouldn't be doing that in that situation. It's just not clever at all. So you do not need that sort of thing when your team's going through a tough time. But you look around the side and, who's doing really well for them at the moment? Who's doing really well? And it's Kieran Tierney and very, very few others. And even Willian, who they brought in, he's not doing as well as he did at Chelsea last season. I rate him as a player, but he's definitely not the future either. There's a hell of a lot to be done there. But you look at lots of teams in the Premier League and you can be average as you like. See if those strikers are banging in the goals. That's all right. It's fine. Strikers ain't banging in the goals. You've got a problem.
There have been reports that Arteta's relationship with David Luiz has soured very badly. Now, his representatives have released a statement refuting those reports and in very strong terms as well. But I don't know, maybe there is no smoke without fire. And then the Mesut Ozil situation continues. And it's funny, what was seen on the Ozil front as a real show of strength on Arteta's behalf when things are going okay to well. Now, it resurfaces as, things are just not working under Arteta when results on the pitch are going badly. When you look at how he sets up the team, when you look at what he's trying to do with the team, do you think, there's a manager who's on the ball, knows his stuff, tactically is on top of his brief? Like, do you like what he's trying to do?
I don't actually see that many managers who I think are hopeless at the top level. They're good. They know their tactical stuff. They generally do, and he does. I've no doubt at all he does. None of that matters. It's about 11 guys there. I'll be good enough. I'll be good enough for that position. That what he puts them out to do. Is it suited to what he's asking them to do? Because he has changed it a couple of times, system-wise. He has adapted it a little bit. I keep on looking through the squad, and I just think don't really know what I would do massively different with that group. I'm not sure what I would do technically massively different. There's a little bit of a, switch here and there. The couple of times when he's, Aubameyang and Lacazette, have they been in the right positions at the right time? You can maybe fiddle about with that a little bit. But the rest of it, he's probably trying to get the best out of what he's got. The thing is with these situations, it's usually a lightning rod, isn't it? And it comes from the fans, or it comes from the press, or it comes from somewhere. It's a lightning rod moment, right? Is it going to be Ozil? I'm just not sure it's going to be him, because I think in the end, Arsenal fans know that if they had Ozil on the team and his limited work rate and they were struggling, that's a nightmare. That possibly even worse than you've got just now, right? That could be an absolute nightmare for you if he's strolling about in some of the games, which he did. Brilliant player, we all know the stuff, but you do that. So you can't have that, especially when you're as low down in the league as they are just now. Is it going to be the David Luiz thing? That it might be. It could be that one. There's every possibility it could be that one, because David's a huge character. He's a huge character in every dressing room he's in. And he's actually always loved by the players he plays alongside. So, if it's a battle of wills between the two, then he might win it individually at Arteta. But it will weaken him as time goes by, especially if the back line doesn't look strong. But I've just got the feeling there's a moment coming for Arteta. It doesn't look great. Most of the people that have been brought in haven't looked phenomenal, although I would say Tierney's been the one massive exception that's proved the role.
There just seems to be a cultural problem at that club, doesn't there? I mean, dating right back to the tail end of the Wenger era, and it's never been properly dealt with. You suspected Arteta was trying to, but these are tricky dynamics to get right.
Are we talking about Manchester United or Arsenal here? And it's a wee bit the same, isn't it? After Sir Alec, it's the whole culture was one thing, and it was embedded within the whole club for a long time. See to be the next manager, sometimes two, sometimes even three managers after that, trying to then completely switch around a culture. It's not easy. Some people seem to be able to do it stunningly quickly, but it's rare. And you watch, I think Mourinho's managed to change the culture at Spurs really quite quickly, which is quite impressive, quicker than I thought he would do. You look at Lampard at Chelsea, that's a massive cultural shift that they have had really quickly. But I've watched other managers over the years find it incredibly hard to do that. And I think sometimes the longer this, be it Wenger, be it Sir Alex, being at a club, you're moving a mountain. You're absolutely moving a mountain to change what was their culture, especially if their culture is aged a little bit. So, and there'll be people in there at various levels that have, I'm not saying they're working against you, but they're not absolutely with you. They're not part of your group, your gang, but they're in with the bricks. That's a hard thing. You end up the first year or two trying to get that cleaned out. And while you're trying to get that cleaned out, you're supposed to be winning games and doing well in the Premier League in Europe. It's really hard to do.
You mentioned Josie there. Have you seen this documentary on the Spurs season last year?
I tend not to watch those things. I find them painful, actually. And the reason being, I find them painful. I started watching. There's been a few now, hasn't there? Right, the City one and all the rest of it. And I know what players are like, and we know it, most of the time you'll be kind of acting up a wee bit. You'll be watching what you say. You'll be watching what you do. With Josie just now, there's a lot of acting going on at the moment. Forget about documentaries. Everywhere there's a lot more, effect going on with Josie. And whereas it used to be, I can't possibly use the word subtle. It wasn't subtle, but you used to kind of go with it a little bit. Whereas now I'm, a lot of the time I'm not going with it. I'm just thinking, oh, come on, that's a poor imitation of the Jose Mourinho, who was a strong character that everybody believed in. It feels slightly caricaturist just now, so it hasn't really dragged me as an interest. And it's nothing got to do with the fact that Spurs or anything. It's just I get a bit bored with the caricatures.
Yeah. Well, I watched it because I had too much time in my hands. And, fully expecting the whole thing clearly to be signed and approved from the Spurs marketing team, and for it to be fairly stage managed. But, moments of candor break out because there are cameras just stationed. They're not handheld cameras. They're just stationed at certain points on the wall or in the dressing room. So, but you mentioned Mourinho and what he's done with the Spurs culture. And in those moments of candor which break out, It was not complicated what he wanted them to do at times. I mean, and I think it made headlines where he told them not to be such nice C's. But on several occasions, half time, the discussion was, why aren't you fouling them when they're starting to transition? And he said, and he'd go to the board at times, he'd say, him, and him. They're all on yellow cards after the first half, And there was this like to and fro for the first few months where he was repeating this regularly. And towards the end of the season, the Spurs boys are a bit more, some might call it cynical, others might call it cute, whatever you want to call it. But, Mourinho was nodding approvingly as they tactically fouled and dug in and did all these kind of dark arts type things. And, they responded to him, was the point. Like, that could have gone one of two ways. You could see the players looking around saying, is this it? Is this your great idea that we have to be a bit nastier? And actually, a lot of the players, you could see them lapping it up in the dressing room.
Which underlines the reason why I tend not to watch them, because I'm sitting watching going, yep, see managers do that. I know they try to do it. I know the culture try to build here. There's different types of culture. 1 week or 2 weeks into it, I'd be sitting looking at the manager and thinking, yeah, I know where you're going. I've got that. And most of the players after a wee while, they get it. Some of them take a bit longer to figure it out. But that's kind of what it is. It's management's like repetition. It's just repeat. Some of the guys have got more sophisticated stuff they can take on board, and you will do the more sophisticated stuff in other areas. But see, getting into the heads, like, this is our culture. This is what we do. Keep it doing. Keep doing it. It becomes second nature. And it's a very, very simple thing. They all do the same. If it starts working, they all buy in. If it doesn't seem to be working, you've lost them. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about that way, that Josie. Does that shock you, really?
I was more. It didn't shock me. I was more surprised that almost hasn't had its day. That like the players will be saying, "Well, hang on, Guardiola's teaching the lads intricate football, and we're doing this."
Yeah, but Guardiola gets something to fill in those places as well.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Yeah,
Guardiola's as good as anybody doing it. That was always done. You take players out, you take one for the team. It's almost dressed up as something modern. Mourinho was doing this at Porto. You could tell what he was doing at Porto, and. The other stuff that the thing that my bugbear above all others is people rolling about trying to get penalties and all that sort of stuff, and trying to get people sent off. That's the sort of stuff that in the past didn't openly happen. That's the sort of stuff that I would imagine would be cut out of the documentary before you've seen it. But maybe it's been in there, but kind of doubt. Yeah. That's the stuff I want to know. Is that there? Is that happening on the pitch? Is that happening on the training pitch? Is that happening? At half-time, why didn't you take him down? Whereas it was unspoken in years gone by. That would be the bit that would interest me. Wait a minute, has this bit of culture changed? That's the sort of stuff that I would watch for. And that's the sort of stuff there is no way in the world they're going to let that through. No chance.
The only person who comes out of it anyway badly is Danny Rose, and I suspect that was an executive decision. And before you go, because I know you have to run, that Champions League draw, anything jumping out to you?
Obviously, I'll be looking at Chelsea win them. So I'm gutted for Chelsea, who had a very good campaign, and then get Atletico Madrid, which is really, really tough one for them. They got Bayern Munich in the last one. But, it's one of those ones where you win it, and you think, well, you get a little bit lucky. You'll get, Mönchengladbach. They're not a bad team, or a Lazio or whatever. I would say Chelsea got the worst draw possible there, but Leipzig's not going to be easy for Liverpool. I find that quite an interesting draw, actually. This is a season, unlike most seasons, where is there any one of those games you look down at and think, that's a stick one? I would say, other than Bayern, I'm looking at them all and I'm saying, no, I'm not sure about that. Don't know how I can call that one. And that's a good thing for any knockout tournament. So I quite like it. I'm looking forward to Barca, PSG. That'll be interesting. Don't know if it'll be great, but it'll be interesting because of what Barca have been going through. But all the other ones could go either way. That's the way a knockout competition should be.
Yeah, Atletico Chelsea is interesting. Lampard a couple of weeks back against Spurs knew exactly what not to do to play into Mourinho's hands. And this Chelsea team, got the drift. They understood how to play that kind of game as well. So, they're not going in there against Atletico as freewheeling, open at the back, can't help themselves but push forward types at this moment.
No, they're better. They're a year on. They've learned a lot. They've played well recently, apart from it absolutely stunk to high heaven against Everton, which was an extraordinary. There was a couple of, there's this great thing happens, professional football. See if you have a really, really bad game, I mean a real stinker, right? The next week in training, everyone says you're having and then mention that name. All this week in training, if you make a mistake, you're having a Kai Havertz, okay? It was that bad for Kai. And he's going to be a very, very good player, but Werner wasn't far ahead of him. The amount of bad games, that those bad plays that they made, particularly in that first half, was like, my jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe they played that badly. If they do that again against the likes of Atletico Madrid, they've no chance. But they're better than that. They will be better than that. And that will be a tight tie. It's a tough one to get. I would actually say it's as close as 50-50. No more than that. I wouldn't say Atletico were more favourites than that, because Chelsea have got an awful lot of quality going forward. You could almost say the same for the rest of them. I just hope Liverpool are back to their strongest again by the time the tie comes round against Leipzig, because the real shame for, it's looking at Liverpool's team just now when they're setting out, it does seem a long way from that team that were just all conquering. They were fabulous for the 2 or 3 seasons there. They seem a wee distance away from that, and I'd like to see them back at their best, but that comes down to getting everybody fit and being able to rest people now and again. It's tough because the depth of squad isn't anywhere near as good as they would like it to be.
No, it's true.
Before you go any further, can I have one word about that penalty kick against Fulham? So Liverpool fans will be going, "Oh, shut up, Nevin, you Everton Chelsea man." Right? See the penalty kick that Fulham didn't get. There was the phrase everyone says, like afterwards, manager says, "I don't know why we didn't get it. It was a clear penalty kick." And then I've heard various people talking about it, and I'm thinking, that's just the most stunningly obvious penalty kick I've ever seen. But why has he not given it? Because you need to be open about it. Ask yourself, is it me? Am I seeing it wrong? And first of all, I want to ask you, what did you think? Did you think it was a clear and obvious penalty kick when you seen it again? See, I'm delighted you held on for a minute. The reason being, right, you have to look at it in this way, and it's slightly changed my viewpoint in this. He's gone past him, right? I know for a fact he's taken him out, right? He's not got the ball, but the bottom of his right leg is taken out the back of his left leg. He's taken him out, and that's shot him away. He's not got the ball. That's purely a penalty kick. That's 100% what a penalty kick is, right? But see if you've not been on the end of that tackle, you actually don't see it as clear as that. You're looking at everything else that's happening around, all different parts of the body. There is only one tiny bit to look at. But I know that because I've been there before, and I've been hit there before, and I know I've got the ball, I've been wiped out, he's not got the ball, it's a penalty kick. But I understand people looking at it that haven't been there, and by the way, that includes some players who wouldn't see it, who wouldn't get it. But it's a clear penalty kick. But does that still mean it's a penalty? Like, here's where it gets complicated. Because that's, for a referee, is that a clear and obvious penalty kick? He might not see it either. So is that a clear and obvious mistake that he's made? Because he didn't see it. It's a really difficult one. He got it, in my opinion, he got it massively wrong. It was a clear penalty kick. But that's only because I know what happened. He might have watched that 3 times and still doesn't really know what happened.
Yeah. On Liverpool and getting back to where they were, which was pretty much the best team in Europe. Who are the best team in Europe at the moment? Are Bayern Munich flying? I know you keep an eye on all the German football. There's too much sport on at the moment for me to watch everything. Are Bayern about the best team in Europe at the moment? Doesn't seem like it's anyone from Spain, that's for sure.
No, it's not. It's not Spain. Yeah, I'd say at the moment. Man City are the best, but they're not at their best. Could take them on. But no, I think they're maybe by a little distance the best. And the worrying thing, of course, is typical of Bayern. What they tend to do is they time it. They just get better and better as the season goes on. It's more often than not that's the case for them. Now, I'm not saying they're completely unbeatable. They're not. But player for player, what they can bring in and how they're organised, the way they play, you would not want to. If there was one team in Champions League you did not want to face, by 100%, by a million miles, it's Bayern.
Okay, Pat Nevin, brilliant stuff. We'll talk to you next week. It'll be our last little chat before Christmas, so we'll see you then. Thanks, Emil.
Look forward to it. See you then.